This episode of EMS One-Stop is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's Lexipol.com. Hello and welcome back to the first edition of EMS One-Stop for 2025. Now, normally I'd wish everybody a happy new year, but sadly it hasn't started very happy at all. At the time of recording, we're only 3 weeks into the new year. Of course, we had the very tragic events of New Year's Eve and the 1st of January in New Orleans, and we're going to come on to that in a second. But also, it's continued over here in California. Of course, we have the California wildfires, the Palisade fire that has wiped billions of dollars worth of property. At the current count, 25 people have sadly lost their lives. The Eaton fire in Altadena. We already know that some of our brave providers working in the California and the LA system have lost homes. And of course, that's something perhaps we'll come back to in another edition of EMS One-Stop. So 2025, from a professional perspective, hasn't kicked off very well at all. But let's go back to New Year's Eve, to January the 1st, and talk in this edition about New Orleans. We've been working with New Orleans EMS now for a little while. You may go into the back catalogue and realise we have some fantastic discussions about the clinical excellence and the work and the groundbreaking stuff that New Orleans are doing. This time it's time to come back and look at the operation and the tragedy that was New Year's Eve, January the 1st, and I'd like to welcome New Orleans Chief Bill Salmeron. Bill, welcome, and how are you?
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me, and thank you for doing a lot of other segments with us about the great things that we're doing. Really appreciate you and the work that you do, not only with us, but EMS in general, about just telling the story. It's really important, and so we're doing. I think we're processing still. We're doing well, right? We have a number of staff members that, we're really greatly impacting, during the event as far as being on the ground, seeing everything. And so we've had a lot of opportunity to help take care of them with some resources. And so everybody's doing fine right now. It's going to be some more time to process, but everybody's doing well.
So from your perspective, obviously you're in the middle of all of this, sort of chronologically, if you don't mind, sort of take us back to, let's say midnight of New Year's Eve or New Year's Day.
Yeah, so New Year's Eve is similar to all of our special events. We do put a special event coverage package up in the French Quarter and the downtown area because of it's, that's where most of our events are happening, and our tourist and heavy pedestrian, on Bourbon Street, as well as the entire French Quarter. So we had a number of units on duty. Usually have a handful of ambulances. We have 2 of the ASAP carts that are in the quarter, and then we have some bike teams up. And so, around 3 a.m., looking at our call volume, and, we were sitting, our crews were sitting on Canal Street at Bourbon, where the truck made the turn. And they saw everything. They saw the truck make the turn, and they started to, respond to that immediate corner, just thinking it was a few people. Because, we do have, in the French Quarter and during Mardi Gras, we do have, drunk drivers or people who, take a wrong turn, and then they're with a bunch of pedestrians, and then they'll hit a few people, and then we'll take care of it. And it's usually a small incident. So, but, when they started to respond, they realized the car kept going, the truck kept going, right? And a lot more people were injured. And so that's when they started to get to work.
From a communication perspective, obviously you said that as the vehicle went through that checkpoint or the end of the street there, and there were clearly casualties, but obviously as the vehicle accelerated, the incident accelerated as well. And so how did that sort of chain of communication go from the fact that you've now got 1, got 2, got 3, up to a massive amount? And I think that, the final tally, unfortunately 15 killed, media reports 57 injured, including 2 police officers shot, and we'll come on to that. So this incident is growing by literally the second. And
right.
So from a commander perspective, I mean, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, so I was working New Year's Eve that, the time that I normally work. I got off probably about 30 minutes before it happened and just got home. And the supervisor called me and said, "Hey, just letting you know, we have a car that hit a few people. Um, just letting you know." I said, "Okay, well, just, give me and because that's a normal, thing, right? We or more normal than usual. We I said, "Okay, well, just give me a call, if it gets bigger, And so something told me to turn my radio on. And so I turned my radio on. And that's when I heard our folks, going through and saying, I have this many injured, I have so many reds here, I have, and then, but really hit me was that I have 5 dead here, I have 4 dead here, and that's when it really hit me that, this is unprecedented, right? And so got dressed, hurried on back in, and I was 15 minutes, I was back on scene, and my team was doing a phenomenal job. And so, what we teach with our staff and hopefully others do as well is, anybody can be an incident commander. Your first unit on scene is who is in charge. You need to set up everything. You need to start, establishes some. First of all, you got to declare an MCI, which they did, and then start organizing things to start getting to patients and moving them where they had to go. And so we had some supervisors that were already on scene. One was, designated as incident commander. We had a few others that was supporting them. And that was at the major intersection at Canal and Bourbon, which is the major thoroughfare through downtown, right next to the French Quarter. There was a secondary, there was a casualty collection point that was established a block into the quarter because this incident went 3 blocks in. And so, there was a secondary sort of casualty collection point and command point at a block in on Bourbon Street. And so between those two, they were managing everything of how many casualties we had, what resources we need or whatever it is. And so when I arrived on scene, I just said, "Look, y'all are doing a great job. I'll support you however I need to support you." And so that's what we did. And so, we started that. We started to bring in some additional mutual aid units. So there was a total of 13 ambulances that came in and transported patients. Um, we do double, triple up depending on the truck and the severity of injuries. And so that's what we did. And so from a command standpoint, I think we did everything. I'm so proud of my guys, like my folks. They did a fantastic job just setting everything up for success. If you don't establish, ingress, egress, get all that stuff set up. It certainly helps you as you continue in the incident. So yeah.
So you said a few words and phrases there that lead me and hopefully the listener to believe that you are an organization that is invested in incident command, that you
Yes.
clearly have practiced, prepared, rehearsed. And as we said, New Orleans is I have to say, a party capital of, one of the party capitals of the world. And therefore
Yeah.
you are doing this regularly, obviously not to this level of severity, but that training, those drills obviously kicked in.
Yeah, so we always do every year before Mardi Gras. Early in the year, we do a just a MCI refresher with our staff. In fact, we just did it yesterday at our quarterly meeting. We're going to do another one at our next quarterly meeting next week. And so we normally do that before Mardi Gras, just making sure, just refreshing everything. Hey, making sure you're doing this, making sure you're doing that. We also have during special events, just plans in place to where if we have an incident, this person would likely be the incident commander, and then you do staging, and so we have people pre-designated sometimes, like during Mardi Gras, of if an incident happened, these folks are going to respond and try to take on those positions because that's the way we do that. But we still really just drill into our staff that anybody can be the incident commander or the triage officer or the transport officer or whoever it is. You're going to be in charge until someone else comes in and is able to take over or not take over and just support you, just like I did on New Year's. My guys were doing a great job. I stood back and I did what I could as far as helping to move resources in and making sure that the hospitals were contacted and doing that chief level stuff because obviously people were calling too, asking what was going on. So I was trying to keep the information moving as much as possible at my level, and then make sure we can get those trucks in and out. So, and then last year, because we have Super Bowl and Mardi Gras coming up this year, we did a full scale exercise last in the fall, right? And so that was folks on the ground triaging, moving them, and then the next day we did a tabletop and brought the hospitals in, and we moved a bunch of patients around. Because also you need to remember that we need to involve the hospitals in this, because the hospitals have their own individual MCI plans, and they also need to practice of how to move patients too, right? And when they move patients, they may need ambulances to do that, especially if it's a community hospital or a secondary hospital. And those are resources that you can use in an incident. So working with them very closely and involving them in the drills were very critical. And I'm glad we did that because it helped.
Again, Bill, you've touched on a number of points there that sort of let me extract them in order that, of course, the function of the commander or the leader is to command, and therefore by stepping back you can actually have a greater level of situational awareness. And yes, everybody with more bugles or stars or stripes than you are going to be on the phone to you for briefing, and obviously that's a key role. Communication, as we've seen from many incidents, is always the first battle to overcome, and obviously by doing that it helped you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the hospitals there, and you said one other thing about you doubled and tripled up on the ambulances, and an MCI I was involved with in the UK. Of course, as we said afterwards, the ambulance is whatever we designate it to be. If it's a vehicle, a bus, a truck, if we have to get people moved quickly,
Yeah.
that's the means by which we get them out. Now, of course, what that means also is you're transferring the incident from the scene to the hospital. And so how did that transition go?
So for us, we there was a police officer transported by a police car, right?
Yeah.
That was the only one that we knew that was transported by something other than an ambulance. From this now from that location. Right now, we did also see others, being transported by, and this is expected in an incident, right? Is a lot of your transports, unless you can't walk and unless you're severely injured, you're probably going to go by Uber or Lyft or your own car, or you're going to go home and you're going to sit there for a little while, and then you're going to go to a hospital. And so the number grew. Like when it originally happened, we only had for the incident the 12 dead on scene, and then there was the 35 that were injured that went to the hospital. And so we transported 29 of those 35, and then the rest of those, like I said, one was in a police car because that was a police officer, and that's what cops do, right? They sometimes they don't wait. And then we've had a number of others that were transported by other means, and then others that that again went home, and they went to get evaluated later on. So
I want to, after the break, I want to come back and talk about obviously looking after and caring for the people, and obviously I want to keep the first half for really the operation and not
yeah.
and the leadership and the delivery of the clinical care, etc. But so you had a lot of patients there. We have an MCI going on. In terms of tracking the patients, obviously one of those key sort of things that always comes up is, well, I don't know who they were. I don't know where they went. I don't know who took them. Did you have a plan for that? Did it work?
Yeah, I mean, we knew where the patients were going. We brought all of our trucks into, and the way it was set up, it was pretty convenient on Canal Street, which is that major thoroughfare. When I got there, I told the cop on scene, I said, I need you to clear every cop car and everything out of these blocks going in and going out. I need to bring in trucks. And then they went to work, and they did what they did. And so we brought in all those ambulances, whether they're ours or mutual aid, into that location. And when we started to hear from the secondary casualty collection point down the street that needed a truck, we would send one or two trucks down there to get them. We had a transport officer that was keeping track of patients and where they were going. We have a pretty good idea of our hospital system here. We their statuses are known to us, as far as what the wait time is. Of course, hospital wait time is a big issue. Normally before a big event like, and I was looking back on my emails just to get a timeline and text messages. And so I remember there was a text message that went out and an email that went out to all the hospitals to update their statuses in the ESF8 portal where they keep all their wait times and diversions and things like that. And so the hospitals, going into special events, do a good job of knowing what their capacities are. And then we also know that, right? On a daily basis, we have hospitals that get full, and they say, "Hey, don't come here for a little while," and we don't, right? And so,
Yeah, decompression.
that's on a system by color, right, of what your wait time is. So we knew what the status was, and during MCI, it's pretty much, look, we're coming to you, with whatever. All the injuries were either you were red, we had a few yellows, but red, or you were dead. I mean, that was pretty much what it was on scene. And so our guys are very good at um, determining sick, not sick really quick. On a daily basis, they're great at that. They get on scene, they say, "Hey, this person is sick, not sick. Either we can be here a little while and do some stuff, or we got to load and go," right? And so that's what they were doing. They were going through, they were moving all those reds out just like any normal MCI. They were moving those reds out, they getting the yellows out. And a lot of the yellows were brought down to Canal Street because we ended up opening. So with the point on Canal, I said, well, let's get anybody who can walk. Also any greens, any yellows, carry them down to Canal and Bourbon. We had a group set up there that they can do some treatment in the meantime, so we can just focus the reds and everybody who was serious down the street. There was a lot of cops on scene. I mean, usually for an event like this, we had about 300 police officers just in the French Quarter, and so that was state police, New Orleans Police Department, probation and parole, anybody, the fire marshal, law enforcement folks, anybody who was commissioned usually worked security during these events. So had a lot of folks, treating people. They were moving patients. What was funny, we brought all equipment down the street like stretchers and stuff like that, and we turn around, our stretcher would be gone, right? And then there was some cops that took it and they were moving a patient, and we're like, whoa, hold on, let's bring everything through here, right? And just we appreciate your help. They were doing some great stuff. They were saving some lives. And so it wasn't just us. It was definitely a lot of cops on scene doing stuff. And also, I want to give a shout out. So we did start an EMR program with our police department. I don't know if we talked about that with you. Um, they were on scene with
Actually,
their bags.
Bill, I think we've got that one still to come. I know we've teed that
okay.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. So we definitely, so we partnered with our police department to train folks that were interested as EMRs, right? First responder level. And afterwards, we give you a trauma bag and we give you an AED. And so we trained 10 of them. We have another class right now going through with 8. We're probably going to train about 50 of them. But yeah, those guys were on scene providing care with the kits that we gave them, which was very rewarding to see them using those skills, using that equipment, and getting those patients taken care of.
I mean, what a fantastic level of public safety cooperation. You mentioned police, and of course, every time we talk about MCI, whether it's drill or whether it's kind of review, we talk about that great phrase that you shouldn't be exchanging business cards at the scene of the incident. Obviously, you have a great relationship with law enforcement, fire, and other public safety members in the city, and I mean that's clear. But just emphasize how important that is.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, we know who our partners are. I mean, we work with them on a daily basis, right? And so those that are working the details in this, special event zone, those are your district folks that, we see every day, right? That when they're on calls with you every day. And we also have, so in New Orleans, we have our own state police troop just for the downtown area, right? It's Troop NOLA. And so we see a lot of them, on scene. And we do a lot of planning. We have several, before special events, we have a mayor's briefing that we all sit down with the mayor. We all give our brief of what we're doing, how we're doing it, what our channels are, how many folks we're going to have. we share our plans with each other. So I see the police plan, they do an IEP or an incident action plan at the emergency manager level at the city. So we see everybody's personnel, we see everybody's schedule, everybody's radio channels, and so we're a very interoperable city.
That's really encouraging, and really, it's kind of living the fact that you have to be working with each other. And it's interesting. Again, everybody wants to do the right thing. Everybody wants to grab the stretcher, wants to get the patient. But obviously, we have done webinars on this where we talk about the first 15 minutes of any incident. We've been trying to restore order from chaos. And is that something that your guys did through the fact they knew everybody? They did through sheer force of personality? I mean, how does the team work in a situation like that?
Um, I'm going to say that you just go to work, right? Kind of like an autopilot mode.
Yep.
Hey, this something significant just happened, right? Let's get to work. Let's save some lives, and that's what they did. And from a command standpoint, you make decisions with the best information you have, right? And what really caused us to say, oh wow, that it could have been a lot worse, was the fact that there was explosive devices in the subject's car, and then they also found some other explosive devices in ice chest right on bourbon that was intended to cause either some additional, like to injure and kill first responders. That secondary device, right, that we always hear about, and with things like this. And so when it all first happened, our guys ran to the corner, they started doing their stuff. And then over the police channel, you just hear, I need EMS here, I need EMS there. I mean, we were the most popular, term that morning, right? We need EMS, we need EMS, I need them on a 3, I need them, and so get here. And so, for us with scenes, we have always had the practice of, police always secures that scene. And so in our mind, we were programmed, the police are calling us in, everything must be okay, right? Safe. They neutralized the subject. They shot the subject. There was some folks that were trapped under his vehicle that hit the cherry picker, or the lift device that he ran into. So we had folks actually assessing the subject and the people under the car, and then a police officer walked up and said, "We got to get out of here. There's explosives in that car." So they just hurried up, did a quick assessment, and they retreated, right? And so um, that definitely was a heart stopping moment when we learned that was indeed the case. And so this could have been a lot worse. This was a tragedy. This was a horrific incident. But it could have been a lot worse. I mean, those police officers got in there. They neutralized that subject. We don't know if he had a device to activate those other bombs or whatever it was, but fortunately there was no additional explosions that could have happened, and so we're very, very lucky. But that's just that just tells you, of first responders that run into danger, not looking to just help, right, and treat patients, do our job, let's save some lives, and knowing that you could have been a casualty as well is pretty eye opening, and
Yeah.
it's real. It's real.
It pretty much follows the motto of US Air Force pararescue, that others may live, running into it to do what you need to do. Before we go to the break, obviously that there was a inordinate amount of massive blunt trauma. So obviously
Oh
the
yeah.
injuries that people were seeing were of that variety. And again, dealing with that, some say, I've always maintained that sort of injury is actually the surgeon's injury, not necessarily ours, and therefore
Yeah.
get in there, stabilize, and get out. But how did that process work clinically?
So clinically, it was really it was all, with the exception of the gunshot
Yeah.
wounds that we treated. there was only about 2 or 3 people with, actual gunshot injuries, including the suspect,
Yeah.
and then the rest of it was significant blunt injury. And if you watch the video of the truck going down Bourbon, he was going really fast.
Mm.
And so it's pretty significant injuries, pretty significant internal injuries that we have found or that we suspected as we were moving, head injuries, a lot of broken bones, and so our trauma center does a great job of taking care of a lot of people. We sent the worst injured to the trauma center, and then we activated our plan to say, okay, um, you know, other facilities, I have these trauma that would normally meet trauma criteria to go to the trauma center, but they're full, they're busy, right? And so we just do that secondary triage to say, okay, can these other facilities handle some other traumas that they normally don't do? And they were able to do that and absorb that. I will tell you that. So from the time that the incident first started to the time that we had the last patient transported to a hospital was 95 minutes.
That's quite something. It really is, and I always think about when you see these things on TV, right? You never see the medics. You always see the cops sort of are in the after the fact, of course, because we've been done and gone, and that's really a testament to what EMS does. Before we go any further, we're just going to stop and have a quick message from our sponsor.
Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com.
And we're back. That was, of course, the voice of our voiceover, Jim Dudley from Police One. And of course, we've had a lot of conversation about cops today. So Jim does an amazing program as well. So go over there and listen to the approach from the police side. Also, don't forget, make sure, please, that you like and subscribe on the platform that you take either your podcast or your vodcast from. We're on all of your podcast channels, but also we're on YouTube. So you can actually see, in this case, Bill and I, and obviously any graphics, charts, graphs, etc. we can put up so you can kind of visualize what we're talking about. We are talking about New Year's Eve, New Year's Day in New Orleans. I have with me Chief Bill Salmeron. New Orleans is not a stranger to this show, and we're continuing to highlight some of the excellent work that they're doing. Thank you, Bill. Very informative first half. We talked about the incident. Let's sort of get into post-incident now. And the first thing I want to talk about really is this is now turned into a huge crime scene. And of course, the crews have gone to hospital, but of course, there's evidence preservation, there's statements, there's the capture of everything that's a record. How are you dealing with that, or how have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a giant crime scene. I was very impressed that they were able to process the crime scene and open Bourbon within 24 hours. It was phenomenal. I mean, the FBI and their partners, along with with local law enforcement, processed that scene, I would say, at record speed to get Bourbon reopened, because we had a football game the next day, a major Sugar Bowl game that we normally do, and so we moved the football game another day. So we actually delayed the football game, which is normally the next day on New Year's Day, but we moved it to the second to allow for the scene to be processed, and then also to sweep the city and sweep the stadium to make sure there was no additional threats that needed to be addressed. And fortunately, there was not. The football game went off without a hitch. They processed that scene, and then they reopened Bourbon. And it was definitely done really quickly, really, really, really quickly. Was really impressed with that. As far as documentation, we also made sure, knowing that our records are going to be requested, we started to collect all of our patient care reports, documentations, And then with our mutual aid partners, we also had them send us the patient care reports from their transports as well. And then since we're also using body camera now, right? We've been using body camera for a while.
And let's just jump in there and say, please go back through the EMS One-Stop catalog. We've had that discussion, a very detailed discussion about body-worn cameras, and so reference that point. I'll put the if you're watching, there's the graphic on the screen to show you where to go to. Sorry, do carry on, Bill.
No, yeah, thank you. And thank you for that. Thank you for that episode. It certainly, highlighted the value of it. And I think for this, we started to, and the body camera system that we have, Axon, does allow us to, to catalog, save, and combine cover. Because we had a lot of folks that were on scene that had cameras, and so we're going back through that footage, and we'll make sure to save that when at a later time. We have not been requested to provide any records or interviews as of yet. We do anticipate that to happen, and so we just want to be ready for that when that time comes.
So let's fast forward. So first light has come. Obviously, the crews have done this heroic level of treatment, transport, handover. They're now coming back into HQ, into the base. There's clearly a debrief. There's even more leadership and pastoral care and looking after the people required. So, talk us through that.
Once all of our patients were transported and the scene was secure, my priority was my people, right? I wanted to make sure that everyone was okay. And at that point, I told everybody on scene, I need everyone to go back to headquarters. And then we'll go from there. Right. And so I want you to clock out. I want to make sure that we put eyes on you and speak to everybody, and make sure everyone is okay right in that moment. Right. And so whatever everyone was feeling, we wanted to help them through that, in that moment. And so, we also have a full-time mental health provider on staff. We have a mental health coordinator, to work with our staff on a daily basis. So police, fire, and EMS in New Orleans, we all have full-time on-staff mental health providers to work with our staff through whatever it is that they need. So she came in that morning immediately, and she was working with people and to see if anything needed to be addressed that night. And as soon as everyone was stable for that night, we did a debriefing. And then as soon as everybody was at a good point, they went home. We made sure we gave them a couple of days off. And then we started to, work with them on what's next. Right. And so we had the next couple of days, we did a total of, because that was a Wednesday. So through that weekend, we did a total of 5 debriefings. And so realizing that, it's not just the staff that was on bourbon that night or on scene that needed help. It's everybody. It's everyone feels a level of anxiety from this incident, especially going into Super Bowl and Mardi Gras, and the dangers of the job already does cause anxiety, right? And people process that and may have some feelings. And so we wanted to make sure that we were giving out accurate information to our staff, so everyone's aware of what happened. And then moving forward, is there anything that they need to know about right on their shift? Just be careful, watch your back. Carry on as usual, but still, have that extra, that extra caution when you're on scene of just looking at things, especially within that few days after the incident. We didn't know if there were more bombs at the subject place, because there were some additional places that they found devices. And so, especially going into the French Quarter the next couple of days on calls, that caused a lot of anxiety. So we definitely did debriefings for each watch. In fact, multiple debriefings. We had another follow-up debriefing last night. We're going to do another one tomorrow just to see where people are today. And then that weekend afterwards, our trauma center has a trauma care program that works with people who have suffered trauma and they need counseling or whatever it is. They have what was called a heart huddle at the hospital. And so hospital staff, first responders, and was able to go on that Saturday. And it was a well-attended event. A lot of A lot of our staff was there and talking about how they feel and describing their experience. And that's what we're doing. We're just letting them describe their experience and process, what they need to. Um, our on-staff counselor, is, keeping track of, sort of where everybody is, and working with them. We also, right after the incident, we were really wanted to make sure that we had some intermediate and long-term care available. And so, through the city, if you're a city employee, we made sure that the employee assistance program, United Healthcare, who is our provider, was engaged to make sure we're aware of what the benefits are. And so, any city employee can get, 5 visits, with a mental health provider for free. And then we have access to some online counseling, as well as, I didn't know this, but we can actually download the Calm app, the app that does the, music or scenery or whatever it is, that's available. We didn't know that until now. So, which is great. So, we have that available for our folks if they want to use that. And then there's also some additional care offered through, the trauma center. And so I feel that we have a lot of care available for our folks. I'm very keen on taking care of people when it first happens, because it will prevent you from having longer term PTSD issues down the road, right? Because, we want to address how you feel now, try to process that with you now. So that way, you're not holding on to that. And then down the road, it's obviously going to collect with other things that you're going to see, and you're going to have, issues down the road. So, that's what we're very keen on, is making sure if our folks are, taken care of early, and then, just making sure they have resources to access. And we realize that this is not going to be just a 1 month, recovery. That folks are going to be dealing with this for a long time. And so, we're going to make sure to have those resources available for as long as they need it.
Indeed, this is, we often talk about in terms of the incident itself. The incident takes 24 hours. The recovery takes, years. You had Katrina, it was an event that you're still probably recovering from. This is one of those trauma events that you'll have to monitor. I would imagine going forward. I was just at NEMSP in San Diego. In fact, your team were there presenting as well, actually.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about, the trauma bank. In other words, the medic is seeing a lot of things every day, and that builds up. Of course, there was a massive, deposit in the trauma bank on the first for those team there, for your team, and obviously something to watch. But you've described, some what you did first of all, and obviously, I think there's food for thought there for everybody about how you then deal with this incident. You mentioned Super Bowl, you mentioned Mardi Gras, of course. I always talk about the EMS prize. The EMS prize is we get to do it all again tomorrow, and you're going to have to do it all again tomorrow. And obviously, you've got we've got more significant, larger events coming up. Is it business as usual?
No. Super Bowl is usually what's referred to as a SEER 1 event at the federal level. So it does have a lot of federal resources and protective, designation. So you have a lot more federal law enforcement and federal coordination usually with Super Bowl. So this is the 11th time that we've hosted Super Bowl in the city. A few of us on staff have been through multiple Super Bowls already when it comes to planning and working with agencies. And so, certainly we, expect, and we've already expected, they've already had a plan tour to have a secure, footprint wherever they are, like with the stadium, and then, any fan events or whatever it is around the city. And so, we were already used to that. I think, before the New Year's Day attack, we were already expecting a significant security, lockdown in a lot of areas. We had to put all of our staff through the, NFL, background check program. They all should be identified. You can't go into an area just wearing a uniform. You have to have a credential, right? And so we expected that, and we've been working with them already on that. We do expect there to be some additional, access issues, for us. Usually in the French Quarter, we can get everywhere with an ambulance, that we need to, right? And even when it's locked down, they can move stuff to get us in. Moving forward for Super Bowl and Mardi Gras, there's going to be a lot more street closures that um, that we're usually not used to. The parades go an entire uptown. You have dozens and dozens of blocks that feed into that parade route. You have a road that follows the parade on the backside. We traverse those roads to get to patients and get places. And so we're working with the police department to see what that's going to look like. What our street closures going to look like at Mardi Gras and on Bourbon and in the French. We expect it to happen in the French Quarter right now. We've already seen at night between 6 p.m. and 3 a.m. Usually they do the barricades on Bourbon. You can't turn on Bourbon, and you can only get a vehicle on the Bourbon if there's an emergency. So we have to park and, walk in and get patients. And we always tell our folks, especially during Mardi Gras and special events, the two things that's guaranteed is that you're going to walk to get a patient. You're going to have to walk. And then you're going to be transporting multiple patients, right? And so those are the two givens at any event that we have. So we're used to walking in, we're used to getting patients, and so we just need to expect that. And then we're going to change how, our operations are going to be as far as, having more ASAP carts or bikes, to get into some of those areas that are now going to be closed off.
I'm not sponsored by ASAP, but we had two in Richmond, and they were our saviors in terms of being able to get in everywhere, whether it was actually in the street in a tight event, or indeed, in the park system. And so, great fan of those. Before we end, Bill, and I kind of primed you up for this, that you've given a fantastic account, and thank you very much, of the event itself. Clearly, the aftermath, clearly the care that you are putting towards looking after your people. And of course, that's right now the most important thing. But for those listening, give me your sort of 5 takeaways for leading, commanding, executing operations such as this.
So for an event, whatever it is, whether it be a concert or New Year's Eve or 4th of July, whatever it is, you need to know what your event is. You need to know who's going to be attending your event. You need to you need to be involved when it comes to the security and the risk analysis of an event. So make sure you're connecting with those that do that. Next is to have a plan, right? Having that IEP is important because who people are, what their phone numbers are, what their radio channels are. Not only have that IEP, but read the IEP before the event. You want to pick it up when it's happening and be like, oh, what radio channel should I be on? You should know exactly kind of, where people are and how they're working, so you can adjust your operation if needed to accommodate that. Know your partners, especially in law enforcement, fire. If you're in a city that has a lot of federal law enforcement like us, make sure you know, and state, I'm sorry. So make sure you know all of your agencies, right? Your locals, your state, and your federal officers, because they're going to show up when something happens, and it's important for them to know that, who you are, and then you need to know who they are. What we also found was that we need to educate our law enforcement officers a little better on MCI and what that means. Because during the event, we had a lot of we had a lot of officers working on deceased patients, right? And they didn't understand why we can't help, right? This is an MCI. Reclassifying, people based on their injury and their condition. And so, they didn't understand why we don't work someone who is deceased when I have a lot of other severely injured patients. And so, a lesson for us is we're going to make sure our, law enforcement knows that, and so just make sure when you're working with law enforcement, not only for an event, but just make sure they know your method of operation with single patients and also multiple patients, right? Because it does help manage expectations when something like this happens. Next is involve your hospitals. Your hospitals are critical. You need to know what their status is. You need to have a method to communicate with them if something happens. When it first happened, we were able to contact LEARN, which is the Louisiana Emergency Response Network, which does route patients statewide. They were able to send out alerts to all the hospitals. And so make sure that the hospitals are involved. Fortunately for us in Louisiana at the regional level, we have designated regional coordinators for hospitals, EMS, nursing homes, everything, right? And so we have one point of contact that helps bring all those hospitals together. So make sure you involve your hospitals before on a regular basis, and then also during the event. And lastly, make sure you have a plan to take care of your people. Um, our people are people too. They have feelings. They, you know, you know, they want to help, right? But a lot of times we don't often take care of ourselves before we help others. And so sometimes you need to remind people of that. And so make sure you have the resources. We're lucky to have an on staff full time um, mental health provider, but a lot of agencies don't have that resource. But you know, make sure you have somebody who's available, whether it be a chaplain, whether it be a community mental health provider, whether it be a single or an agency or a hospital or something. Just make sure you have resources for your people to go to immediately and also longer term, right? What we've also found is that to make sure that the providers that are working with your staff are used to first responders. Mental health providers who haven't worked with first responders, they don't know what a first responder goes through. We've had some folks go to mental health providers, you know, after significant incidents or multiple significant incidents, and the therapist was sitting there crying with them, like, "Oh my God, what did you do? And I think you need to quit your job." And so we don't want that type of, you know, help, right? I mean, I appreciate it, but we want to be able to work with a
And that's actually come up in many
oh
discussions
yeah,
that folk have had around the country, where you end up
yeah,
just traumatizing the person that's trying to help you.
exactly. So
We don't
yeah,
mean to
so
do
make
that, but
sure you
that's the
have
nature of the job.
yeah, so make sure you have, you know, providers that are used to working with first responders, um, and can help them, you know, be resilient on the job, right? Of how do you work through these things, but yet still be able to do the job, and how do you work through that while you're continuing to see trauma, you're continuing to see terrible things. How do you work through that and stay healthy?
Yeah. Just going to pick up on one of the points from your points. Of course, the fact that we have the triage tag system, the colors that they are, and obviously the patients that are attached to them based on the work that the medic has done, was probably a tough listen. And you've made the point that you need to explain that, because there's only a limited amount of resource on scene, and you have to do what you can to save and to salvage and to move on. And I would imagine that's something that maybe there's another webinar in that, I think.
Yeah, there is. You know, I think you know, we're moving towards you know, it used to be red, yellow, green, and then black for dead patients, but there were some you know, there's a lot of systems that use the expectant category, whether that be a gray or I know they have the striped, you know, blue and white, or I'm sorry, the black and white ribbons or black and white section. And so we've had you know, what was tough for us on scene was I mean, it was a horrific scene. I mean, it was like wartime type injuries and deaths. You know, in fact, one of our staff member is a vet who served in Iraq. You know, and that brought back a lot of feelings for him because of the vehicle had that ISIS or that ISIS flag on the back, and he noticed that when it first happened, and you know, that brought back a lot of stuff for him, right? And so, you know, working through the triage categories, you know, you know, we're used to seeing, you know, one or two deceased patients on scene. We're very used to just calling those patients and then moving on. But, you know, when you have, you know, family members, you know, cradling a deceased family member on the street screaming for help, you have police officers doing CPR screaming for help, and you have to tell them, "I'm sorry, I can't help your loved one. I have to move on and help somebody else." You don't teach that in EMT class. You know, you don't teach that level of decision making um, in class. I mean, you can't convey that. I mean, we teach, oh, you know, you categorize people, and you know, this is what it is, and we expect that to be so easy for someone to do. Um, it's not.
Thank you, Bill, for highlighting what is the reality of what we all have to do when this happens. My final question, I always ask this question, you're used to it by now. Is there anything I've forgotten to ask, or anything you need to tell us before we go?
No, thank you for having us again on your show. I really appreciate it. Um, I want to highlight my staff. I have a phenomenal staff. I love each and every one of them. They do a great job every day. They did a great job New Year's Day. They saved a lot of lives. I really appreciate them. And we just need to appreciate each other and appreciate our staff for sure. No matter who you are, where you work, if you're volunteer, if you're paid, if you're fire, you're EMS, what we do is a very unique calling, and so it's really important to take care of ourselves and take care of everyone else in our care.
Bill, I can't top those words. Thank you for saying them. We've had some amazing discussion here. We've talked about the incident. We've talked about the aftermath and the recovery. There are a lot of lessons identified, lessons learnt, takeaways here from Bill and the New Orleans team. I would suggest that if you're doing any sort of MCI training, MCI planning, writing your IAPs, thinking about getting into the NIMS system, listen to this podcast and this podcast, because there are some amazing tips and really recollections of what you should be doing and how it should be done. So for the moment, and I say for the moment, Bill, because I know you're coming back, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
So that was Bill Salmeron, Chief of New Orleans EMS, and we have been featuring New Orleans EMS. Go into the back catalogue and look at the work and the discussions we've had about body-worn cameras. As Bill said there, these will come into for great evidential use. Their blood program, we've talked about that too, and we're going to have them back and talk about other things as well. But for the moment, this was the first edition of EMS One-Stop for 2025. We'll see you very, very soon. Thanks to my guest, Bill Salmeron, and from me, Rob Lawrence. Bye for now.